Welcome to Fights, the ultimate home of UFC breaking news, shocking updates, and every story that sets the MMA universe on fire. Stay tuned because here the real action begins. Dominick Cruz exposes UFC's hidden formula for rankings and matchmaking. The world of mixed martial arts thrives on unpredictability, but according to former UFC bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz, there might be less mystery than fans believe when it comes to how fights are booked and how rankings are determined. Cruz, one of the most cerebral fighters ever to compete inside the octagon, has peeled back the curtain on what he calls the true driving force behind the UFC's matchmaking strategy and its controversial ranking system. His revelations strike at the core of a debate that has existed for years. Is the UFC a pure meritocracy or the best rise to the top, or is it a spectacle driven by money, contracts, and business interests above all else? The two-time champion did not mince words. He explained that a fighter's placement in the pecking order often correlates with the size of their contract and the leverage they secure in negotiations. To him, the rankings and matchups are not simply about who is the better fighter, but about who has negotiated their deal effectively and what financial value they carry into the cage. This blunt assessment reframes the entire conversation around matchmaking, turning it from a discussion of sporting fairness to one of economic positioning. In Cruz's own words, the system operates like this. If a fighter negotiates a lucrative contract and is paid at the level of a title contender or champion, that fighter will continue to receive high-profile matchups regardless of recent results. The UFC, he argued, cannot justify paying championship money for fighters to compete against lower-tier opposition, so instead, it strategically keeps them in big-name fights. This means that fighters who have lost may still find themselves ahead of surging prospects simply because of the financial commitments already made by the promotion. This claim aligns with what many fighters and observers have suspected for years. While the UFC maintains an official ranking panel composed of media members, critics have often questioned the transparency and logic behind certain rankings. Fighters with big names, marketable personalities, or lucrative contracts have appeared to receive favorable positions, while rising contenders with fewer eyes on them sometimes struggle to break into the top tiers despite impressive winning streaks. Cruz's remarks validate those suspicions, offering insider confirmation that the system is tied to business decisions more than meritocratic evaluation. To understand the magnitude of this revelation, one has to examine the structure of UFC contracts. Fighters negotiate their deals at specific intervals, often when they are on winning streaks or competing for titles. If they secure a high-paying contract at that point, the UFC's obligation to honor those numbers means the promotion has incentive to maximize the fighter's visibility in big fights, regardless of subsequent losses. Cruz explained that even if a fighter loses, their pay remains fixed at that negotiated rate, making it unlikely the UFC would book them in fights that don't justify such costs. Instead, they are kept in marquee matchups where their name value can help drive pay-per-view buys or ticket sales. For fighters, this creates a strange reality. Success is not only determined by performance inside the cage, but also by the ability to negotiate favorable deals at the right time. Cruz's point highlights that the business of fighting is inseparable from the sport itself. Fighters who understand the system can position themselves strategically, while those who focus purely on results may find themselves overlooked despite strong performances. From a fan perspective, this revelation may feel disheartening, especially for those who view MMA as the purest form of combat sport. The idea that rankings are dictated by contracts rather than results undermines the perception of fairness. Yet at the same time, it underscores the UFC's unique identity, not simply a league, but a promotion. Unlike traditional sports leagues with independent governing bodies, the UFC operates as both the promoter and regulator of its athletes. This dual role allows it to prioritize financial and promotional considerations over strict competitive balance. Cruz himself is uniquely qualified to speak on this topic. His career has been defined not just by triumphs in the cage, but also by long battles with injuries, comebacks, and negotiations. Having been a champion and an analyst, he has seen both sides of the machine. His candidness reflects his reputation for intellectual honesty, even when it challenges the UFC's preferred narratives. When he explains how fighters can lose and still remain in prime positions because of contract values, fans are inclined to listen. His statements also shed light on why certain matchups often appear confusing or even unfair. When fans ask why a fighter coming off a loss is suddenly booked against a top-5 contender, Cruz's explanation provides clarity. It is not necessarily about who deserves the fight based on recent performance, but about fulfilling the obligations of existing contracts while maintaining business appeal. This system also explains why the UFC frequently prioritizes fighters with star power over lesser-known but highly skilled opponents. A marketable fighter who has negotiated a large deal must be placed in meaningful bouts to justify their pay, even if their recent results don't warrant it. In contrast, a dangerous but less popular fighter on a modest contract may be given tougher paths to the top because the UFC has less financial stake in protecting them. The implications of Cruz's comments ripple far beyond one podcast. They challenge fans to rethink how they interpret rankings and matchmaking announcements. They invite journalists and analysts to dig deeper into the connection between contracts and fight bookings. They also empower fighters to recognize the importance of negotiation as part of their career strategy. In the UFC, fighting skill alone is not enough. Understanding the business side can be just as critical. It also raises questions about transparency and legitimacy. If rankings are indeed influenced by contracts, should the UFC be more open about this reality rather than maintaining the illusion of purely merit-based placements? Some might argue that honesty would enhance credibility, while others believe the mystique is essential for sustaining hype and unpredictability. Either way, Cruz's revelations bring the conversation to the forefront in a way few fighters have dared to do. For fighters climbing the ladder, this perspective may alter how they approach their careers. Rather than solely focusing on racking up wins, they may pay closer attention to the timing of their negotiations and the leverage they can generate. A fighter on a hot streak may push harder for a lucrative deal, knowing that such a contract can cement their status in the division even if setbacks occur later. On the flip side, fighters without strong negotiation leverage may continue to face uphill battles, needing to string together long winning streaks before breaking into the spotlight. Cruz's commentary also touches on the broader question of fairness in combat sports. Unlike boxing, where sanctioning bodies and independent rankings create at least the appearance of separation between promoters and rankings, the UFC's model centralizes all power. This makes the company efficient and cohesive, but also blurs the lines between sport and spectacle. Fans love the UFC for its ability to deliver big fights consistently, but they must also reconcile with the fact that meritocracy often takes a backseat to business interests. Reactions to Cruz's statements are likely to be divided. Some fans and fighters will applaud his honesty, appreciating the insight into a system that has long been criticized for its opacity, while others may dismiss his words as bitterness or exaggeration, arguing that performance still plays the primary role and that contracts are just one factor among many. Regardless of the stance, his comments have already sparked discussion across the MMA community, with many debating whether his claims confirmed long-held suspicions or simply represent one perspective from a fighter who has navigated the system for years. Ultimately, Cruz's revelations highlight the complexity of the UFC as both a sport and a business. Fighters are not just athletes, but also entertainers and negotiators. Rankings are not just lists of competitive merit, but also reflections of financial commitments and promotional strategies. Fans are not just spectators of sport, but consumers of a product carefully curated to maximize excitement and profitability. Dominick Cruz has once again demonstrated why he remains one of the sharpest voices in MMA. His willingness to strip away the veneer or sport and expose the financial mechanics beneath reminds everyone that the octagon is not just a place of competition, but also a stage for business. Whether one views this as a betrayal of sporting purity or simply the reality of the fight game, his words ensure that the debate will continue. As the UFC moves forward with blockbuster events, title fights, and ranking updates, fans will now look at the announcements with new skepticism. Every fight booked will carry the question, is this matchup about merit or is it about money? Every ranking update will invite speculation about who negotiated the best deal behind closed doors. Cruz has given fans a new lens through which to view the sport, and once seen, it cannot be unseen. The UFC's magic has always been its ability to blend sport